Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. What I'd like to spend the next 20 minutes or so is just talking to you a little bit about the Origin Green Sustainability Programme. It's the first national sustainability programme for food and drink anywhere in the world, and it's really about demonstrating the credentials and the commitments of the Irish food and drink industry to produce in a more sustainable manner. There's three things that I'd like to cover off during the 20 minutes. First of all, a little bit of detail on what's driving the issue of sustainability in the marketplace. We're all aware of it from a policy point of view, but in the marketplace as well, we're seeing a lot of developments in that regard. Just want to talk to you a little bit then about Origin Green itself. What exactly is it? How does it work? How does it work at farm level? How does it work at food company level? And then finally, how do we communicate this? How do we show our customers in the international marketplace what Origin Green and indeed what Irish food and drink is all about? Listen, we're all well familiar with the challenge that's facing us all globally. We'll have an extra 2.4 billion people living on the planet by the year 2050, and those extra 2.4 billion people are going to lead to an increasing demand for food products, which sounds like an opportunity for an export-orientated country like Ireland, and it is. We produce a lot of the products that global consumers want. But we also have to remember that that extra food is going to come from a world that has finite resources. It has finite resources in terms of land. It has finite resources in terms of resources like water. So we have a real challenge about how do we produce enough food for a global population of 9.7 billion people by 2050. So when you put it all together, we're probably going to need to double food production in the next 4 decades. And how do we do that in a more sustainable manner? And that's the challenge facing us all. I think we have seen, because of those sort of challenges that are out there, we've seen the international food and drink industry look at its own supply chain and say, right, what do we need to do to make that supply chain more sustainable? What do we need to do at a farm level, at our own manufacturing level, and from a distribution point of view? How can we make that happen over a period of time? And typically what we're seeing is many customers developing 10-year, 15-year sustainability strategies for their business and outlining commitments about what they want to achieve over that time period. So you look, for example, there at Unilever. They have developed their sustainable living plan. They have 3 key planks to that plan. The first is about improving health and well-being. Second is about reducing environmental impact, and the third is about enhancing livelihoods. Under each of those areas, they have set themselves clear commitments about what they want to achieve between now and the year 2020. We look at those commitments and we see very clearly that many of them are heavily dependent on their suppliers if they're going to achieve them. So if you consider Ireland being an export-orientated country, want to be supplying companies like Unilever, what does that mean for us? Is it an opportunity for us to demonstrate what we can offer and how we're working to improve over time? Or do we just keep the head down and wait for them to ask us questions? We've taken the view through Origin Green that there's a lot of good things that the Irish food and drink industry has to offer, and we need to be able to demonstrate those and prove what we're doing to get better all the time. And if you look at some of the areas that these companies are looking at, one of the key focuses that I have is sustainable sourcing. You look at McDonald's last year, for example, made a commitment that from 2016 they're going to begin purchasing verified sustainable beef. What they're currently trying to do is work their way through and say, well, what does verified sustainable beef look like? From an Irish point of view, I suppose it's encouraging that for their flagship farms programme for Europe, the first 2 beef flagship farms that they have are based here in Ireland. So that says to us that a customer like McDonald's sees a lot of positives in how we rear and produce our animals to produce beef in this country. Likewise, I've talked about Unilever and their sustainable living plan. They have their sustainable agriculture code, and part of that is about 100% sourcing of sustainable raw materials by 2020. Since we launched the Sustainable Dairy Assurance Scheme as part of Origin Green, we've been working with Unilever to see if they can recognise what we're doing here on the ground. And as of early last year, they've fully recognised the Sustainable Dairy Assurance Scheme as being fully equivalent to what they're looking for and what they deem to be a sustainable source of milk ingredients and products. So that's the sort of potential that's there from an Irish point of view. And I suppose a lot of those factors are coming about because we have a lot of strengths that give us a good starting point when it comes to sustainable production. You look at greenhouse gas emissions, and a study published by the European Commission back in 2011-2012 looked across each member state and looked at what the carbon footprint was for different products. For milk, Ireland has the joint lowest carbon footprint in Europe. For beef, we have the 5th lowest carbon footprint in Europe. So what that says is the grass-based production system that we have actually performs really well from a sustainability point of view. Globally, water availability is a massive issue. If we keep going the way we are globally, 2/3 of the world's population could be living under water stress by the year 2030. When it comes to Ireland, We have water stress at times in that we have too much water falling from the sky. But globally, it's a massive, massive issue. You look at water stress in terms of Ireland, 0.1% of our territory is under water stress. Across Europe, typically, that figure is between 8 and 15%. A massive strength that we haven't always spoken enough about, but is going to be a key driver in sustainable supply chains over the medium term. Likewise, when we talk to customers about their perceptions of Ireland, they view us as being green and they view us as being natural. So that picture, if you like, in the background of that slide is what customers think about when they think about Irish food production. But equally, those customers are now saying to us, well, that picture is not enough. You have to provide us with the facts and figures and proof to show that that is actually a sustainable system, and show us what you're doing to prove that that's the case, and show us what you're doing to improve your performance over time. And really, I suppose, that was where Origin Green came from. We looked at those sort of developments and we said, well, there's a couple of things that we need to do here if we feel we have a potential strength in the area of sustainability. Number one, we needed to put a structure in place that would allow us to build that proof or provide the facts and figures. And number two, we needed then to have a platform to allow us to communicate that clearly in the international marketplace. And essentially, that's what Origin Green is set up to do. Provide a structure at farm and at food company level that will allow us to demonstrate what we're currently doing and how we're working to progress, and then communicate that very clearly in the international marketplace. So what exactly is Origin Green then? Well, the first thing it's a business-to-business initiative. If you think back to the Unilevers, the Nestle's, companies like that, they set their strategies out about what they want to achieve. Origin Green is designed to say, well, we can help you achieve some of those targets over the medium to longer term, and in doing so, build a stronger business relationship with them. It very much works on an evidence-based approach. So as we'll see later on, companies sign up to a sustainability charter, and farmers participate in quality and sustainability schemes. So evidence-based throughout the supply chain is the objective through the Origin Green programme. When we launched Origin Green back in June 2012, we outlined what we called, I suppose, 4 conditions for success. If this programme was going to work, what did we need to deliver on? And the first element of those was we needed to get every farm and every food manufacturing business signed up to the sustainability agenda, bought into this agenda and working towards planning and developing their own individual systems. We needed to be sure we measured what mattered. We could measure till the cows come home, but if we're not measuring the right issues, how are we going to recognise potential for improvement and deliver on that improvement? From a credibility point of view, it was going to be critical that everything we did had accreditation and independent verification attached to it. So it wasn't just Board B saying it, but we had to have independent third parties at every stage in the process. And the final condition, I suppose in many ways the key one, in terms of what the programme will ultimately be judged on and its impact, we needed to say, well, how could we identify best practice and encourage adoption of that best practice, the utilisation of technologies and innovation to drive improvement. So in time to come, we'll show this is the impact that Origin Green is having in the Irish food and drink industry. There's the 2 elements to the programme, as I said, the farm element and food company element. At farm level, I suppose, it's really all about measuring what matters. For the last 20 years or so, we've been developing what we would traditionally have called quality assurance programmes that would have focused on traceability, animal health and welfare, and I suppose general environmental issues, and all the time zooming in on food safety. We view each and every one of those as being really important from a sustainability point of view. What Origin Green does is it takes those and builds onto them an extra layer in terms of starting to assess greenhouse gas emissions, looking at energy efficiency, water conservation, biodiversity, and the whole area of socio-economic aspects of farming in Ireland in terms of farming's contribution to its local community and the rural economy generally. So Origin Green basically extends the scope and depth of what we've been doing at farm level for quite a number of years. The second element then is, I suppose, is trying to build scale. And what we're doing there is we're utilising a quality assurance infrastructure that we have in place that sees us visit 800 farms a week, or 40,000 farms this year, and doing a complete sustainability assessment on each and every one of those farms that we visit. So, for example, at the moment we have 45,000 beef farms, which between them would account for 90% of our beef exports, undertaking those Origin Green assessments. Through the Sustainable Dairy Assurance Scheme, we currently have 13,000 of the country's 18,000 dairy farms signed up to that programme and starting to undertake similar types of assessments as we're seeing on beef farms. And it's our intention by the end of next year that every primary agriculture sector in the Irish food business will undertake similar assessments at farm level. So we'll be able to measure what matters and identify areas that offer improvement or potential for improvement for us over the medium time. As I said before, accreditation and verification was absolutely vital to us from a credibility point of view. So all of our farm audits work are accredited to ISO 17065. And I suppose the difference then within Origin Green is the fact that we're carbon footprinting every single farm that we visit. It was really important for us that we came up with an approach that was going to be recognised in that regard. So that's why we've been working with the Carbon Trust. I know Michael from the Carbon Trust is speaking here this morning. We've been working with the Carbon Trust since 2009 on developing accredited carbon footprint methodologies for beef, for dairy, for poultry, for pig meat and lamb, and more recently working in grain as well. So bringing that accreditation and independent, if you like, an approach to it as much as we possibly can. In terms of the farm sustainability assessments then themselves, we use handheld technology as much as we possibly can. So when the auditor goes onto the farm, they have their tablet device with them. And we've really worked hard to try and reduce the amount of duplication. So any information we can get elsewhere on national database, we ask the farmers permission to access their records on national databases, rather than spending additional time with them duplicating information they've provided already. So when we're on the farm, we just ask that farmer for information we can't get elsewhere, like the length of the grazing season, what the animals are eating, how much fertiliser has been used, how is manure being managed, issues like that. Then with the farmer's permission, we access a full herd profile that details every single animal on every single farm, every day of the year across the country through the Department of Agriculture's AIM database. So we suck that into our own centralised database. Likewise, there's a Cattle Breeding Federation database that has a lot of productivity information as well. So piling that all together into our system, working it through the carbon footprinting models that we have, we come up with an indicative performance for each farm. And the idea of coming up with that indicative performance is, number one, to give the farmer an indication, well, what is their carbon footprint? And how does that compare to other farmers in a similar production system? But really what we're trying to get at there is, what are the factors that influence the carbon footprint performance of that farm? And how is that farm currently performing in those areas? So trying to break it down into management practices that the farmers will be considering and thinking about as part of their day-to-day management. For each of those, we score the farmer on a scale of 1 to 10. And the final part of the feedback report then really focuses on those areas where a farmer is currently scoring 6 or less, and gives them an indication, well, if you're to increase your performance in those areas by 1 point, what difference would it make from a greenhouse gas emissions point of view, and what difference would it make in terms of the farm's financial performance as well? So really what we're trying to do in that stage is using data to drive performance. We're looking at management practices that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but also help the farm's financial performance. And really, the message that we're trying to focus on is, typically speaking, for most of those measures, anything that will make the farm more sustainable will also make the farm more efficient and more viable in the long term. And that's absolutely a critical component. We have to make this issue tangible for farmers in order for them to engage with the issue. And I suppose in terms of trying to identify scope for improvement with farmers, then we've teamed up with Teagasc here in Ireland to develop what we call a Carbon Navigator tool. And really that's a software tool that allows the farmer to set targets in some of those areas and see what impact achieving those targets might have. Really what we were looking at is, for each farm, what can they do that's relevant for them, that fits with their production system, and we try and quantify through the tool what impact that will have for them. So is it a 1% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions? Is it €100 or €1,000? Give them an idea of what scale of impact making those improvements can have. So that's the farm level. The second element then is what we do with food companies. And really the Origin Green Charter is all about food companies becoming verified members of the programme. And to become a verified member, companies have to develop an independently verified sustainability plan with clear, measurable targets across a number of areas. Since we launched the programme back in June 2012, we've had 474 companies that have registered to participate in the Origin Green programme. Between them, those 474 companies would account for about 95% of our food and drink exports. Now, the one thing that we've learned over the last 3 years is it takes time to get from registration to becoming a fully verified member of the programme. We currently have 122 companies that are fully verified members of Origin Green, which between them they would account for about 85% of our exports. We have a further 157 companies that have draft plans developed. So we're currently working with them to refine the detail of their plan to get them in a state that they're ready to be formally reviewed by the SGS group. So we're working through, if you like, a pipeline of companies. We've made good progress to date, but we have a good group of companies that we still need to work with to get them to be verified as full members of the Origin Green programme. What we do, I suppose, is we allow the companies in some ways to set their own individual targets, because we took the view from the very start that the targets had to be relevant for each company themselves. There is no one-size-fits-all solution here. Each company will be different in terms of where they're at in different areas under the sustainability heading. And really what we do is we guide companies through the areas that we want to see targets included on. We have 3 areas that we ask them to include targets on. The first is raw material sourcing. So are they sourcing from suppliers with recognised certifications? Have the sustainability initiatives in place with suppliers? The second is what we call the manufacturing process. And I suppose in many ways it's resource efficiency. It's looking at energy, emissions, waste, water, areas like that. And the third area then is social sustainability. So we're looking at the health and nutrition attributes of products. We're looking at a company's role in its local community and the whole area of employee well-being. So each company looks at those areas and sets targets that are relevant for themselves. And really that's the process that they start going through. So they look at the relevant target areas that fit their business, that they feel they can achieve over a 3 to 5 year period. We ask them then to set a baseline from which they're going to measure progress from. And for each of the target areas that they choose, what initiatives are they going to implement in the first year of the plan, the second year of the plan, etc., and what impact do they expect them to have? In return, we get their plans independently verified by the SGS group, and it's only when SGS approves that plan does the company become a verified member of the programme. And that verified membership then is subject to them every year submitting an annual progress report to us to say, well, this is what we said we were going to do in the last year, how have we got on? Are we on schedule, behind schedule, ahead of schedule? So really what we have is an independently verified process that sees the commitments that are being made and also independently verified progress that companies are making every single year in terms of implementing their Origin Green plan. Just to give you an example of some of the targets that are being set, so for example, on raw material sourcing, 80% of inputs coming from suppliers with recognised certification programs by the end of last year, a 50% reduction in operational emissions by 2020, and a removal of artificial colourings by 2015. So clear, measurable targets being set at all stages that can be verified on an ongoing basis. We recognised earlier on that it does take companies time to get their head around developing a sustainability plan and implementing a sustainability plan. So we've tried to offer as much support to companies as we possibly can. So for example, last year we developed an online Origin Green platform, which is designed to act as a one-stop shop to give all the resources and guidance that companies would need to help them through the process of developing an Origin Green plan. There's currently 511 users signed up and actively using that platform on an ongoing basis. So using the resources that we provide to help them through that process. And that's a core part of what we're trying to do to make it as easy and as straightforward as possible. The other thing that's important from a Board BA point of view is we're not the technical experts in a lot of these areas. So through the platform, we link companies in with a number of organisations that have services and expertise to offer. So the EPA-funded Green Business Programme, for example, in terms of the resource efficiency assessments they'll do. Repack in terms of packaging. Enterprise Ireland and a number of the green programmes that they have there. Likewise on the seafood end of things with BIM and their green seafood business. So Board BA tries to link companies up with where relevant expertise is available that could help them develop and implement their plans. So that's the structure part of Origin Green, if you like. The second part then from our point of view is, well, how can we communicate that in the international marketplace? Because there's no point in us investing all this effort if we're not able to communicate that and build a reputation of Irish food and drink in the marketplace and ultimately build a preference for our products. So over the last 3 years, a big focus has been on building the awareness of the programme among international customers and international thought leaders. And I suppose really what it's been about in many ways is about getting advocates of Origin Green that see what we're doing and can talk about it internationally when they're moving around various countries. For example, at last year's Climate Change Summit in New York, the then CEO of McDonald's, Don Thompson, had a 5-minute presentation to make, and he took the time within that 5 minutes to talk about what he'd seen in Ireland and how he felt it was an approach that could be adopted elsewhere. Likewise, the World Wildlife Fund has been strongly advocating what we're doing here as an approach that can work in other regions of the world as well. And more recently, in June of this year, the President of the World Bank, has talked about Ireland being a model that could be used across the globe to help focus on the issue of sustainability and put a structure to what we all need to be achieving globally in terms of setting clear, measurable targets that can be tracked on an ongoing basis. So we have got to the point where we've got good awareness of the programme, and really what it's been over the last year in particular then is changing that awareness into an actual understanding. And that's where we have an Origin Green Ambassador programme that's absolutely critical to us in doing that. Essentially what it is we have 10 Origin Green Ambassadors who do a Masters in Sustainable Business out in the Michael Smurfit Business School at UCD over a 2-year period. And 18 months of that 2-year period involves those ambassadors working in 3 6-month blocks, market placements with some of the companies that you see around the edges of the slide there. Really what it is, working in the sustainability teams of those businesses, getting a really good feel for what the challenges they're facing and how they're addressing their challenges. Secondly, from an Origin Green point of view, it gives us a period of time where we can really embed what Origin Green is all about with those customers. I think an indication of the success of that programme has been the fact that virtually every one of the host companies that have hosted ambassadors over the last 2 years have come to Ireland for themselves to see how the programme operates at farm level and how it's operating at food company. They see it as an approach that can work across their supply chain, and that's really valuable to us in building our reputation and trying to drive that preference for our products over a period of time. In terms of more immediate things, then next week we have a Global Sustainability Forum here in Dublin in the Convention Centre that's really designed to bring about 350 sustainability professionals from around the world into Ireland to talk about the challenges facing us to deliver a more sustainable supply chain. So learn more from each other, share learnings and get a really good discussion going around some of these areas. And by having it here in Ireland is to place Ireland and the Irish food and drink industry at the centre of that discussion. The idea is there's a lot of issues that we're all facing. How can we learn from each other and how can we have that discussion here in Ireland to position ourselves as potentially a leader in this given area? All of our trade fairs now are Origin Green branded. That's the umbrella brand for Irish food and drink products. So Origin Green says this is what we stand for. This is what we're trying to do as a food producing country. And finally then, in terms of, we're 3 years in, I suppose a lot of the work over the last 3 years has been about putting structure in place behind the programme. We now feel we're at the point where we can report on real progress. So next week, as part of that Global Sustainability Forum, we'll be publishing the first Origin Green Sustainability Report that will itemise the progress we've made in that 3-year period, the types of commitments being made by companies and at farm level, and the types of progress that we can report. So this is the first of an annual series of sustainability reports that will be published as part of Origin Green, and it's back to where I started in terms of providing the facts and figures and providing the proof behind what we're trying to say about the Irish food and drink industry. I'd just like to finish on this slide in terms of where we're coming from with this programme. Really what we're about at Origin Green is saving resources. We want to save the resources because there's only finite resources available globally, but we also want to have an industry here that's as efficient as it can possibly be. We want to build the reputation of the Irish food and drink industry, because ultimately the stronger the reputation we have, the stronger position we're in to build that market preference for our products, and ultimately we want to win business for the industry. A big part of sustainability is economic sustainability. We have to have a viable sector if we're going to have a food and drink sector into the medium term, and to do that we have to have as many customers buying as much product in terms of on a consistent basis from us as they possibly can. So it's about showing what we're doing here, what we have to offer, the genuine commitment to improve our performance, and trying to use that to build relationships with key customers around the globe. So I'm going to leave it at that. I thank you for your time. I know you have a very busy schedule today, so I thank you for the few minutes and appreciate your time. Thank you.